Simon Wheatcroft is really an inspiration. He is, so I will show you a video, but we came across him in a Carphone Warehouse video. It really inspired us and inspired us to invite him to speak here. Simon is a blind ultramarathon runner who went blind at the age of 17, and at that point started using technology to really help him adapt to everyday life and to make his life easier. And not only has it made his life easier, he's now taking on running across the Sahara, which is a pretty significant achievement. And to add to that, he's just generally a really lovely bloke. I've had the pleasure of sort of getting to know him over the last few weeks, and a really nice guy. So that's Simon, but before I invite him up on the stage, I'm just going to show you that video I mentioned that really inspired us to get him to hopefully inspire you and come speak today. So I'll play the video.
My name's Simon Wheatcroft. Unbeknown to me, I was born with a degenerative eye disorder called retinitis pigmentosa. By the age of 17, I'd lost enough vision to be classed as legally blind. I couldn't really see a future. I can't sort of emphasise enough how much the smartphone has made a big difference to my life. Without the phone, I don't think I'd be able to do half the things I'm doing nowadays. It wasn't until probably 26, 27 where I really started to turn it around, and running was a way to fight back. I headed out to a closed road. In terms of apps, I was using Runkeeper to give me audio feedback in terms of distance and pace and things like that.
Runkeeper.
I just learned to run up and down a straight piece of road.
Activity started.
Running up and down a closed road on the same piece of tarmac, just straight up and down.
Distance.
It just gets to you after a while. I lost that sense of freedom.
2 miles. 2 distance.
And then the idea popped in my head that I could just step out to the road and run down the road. I told myself that cars will move. I ran to the bottom of the road, realised what I'd just done and cried, really. I'd believed that that wasn't possible, but in the past few minutes, I just proved to myself that it is. It was probably when I started to click on that I was always hitting the same things underfoot when Runkeeper was giving me the distance markers. So that gave me the idea that things underfoot could be matched with the audio from the smartphone. So, for example, when I needed to turn right, I knew that Runkeeper would give a signal at around 0.6 miles. And once you begin to train more, you start to think, well, how far can I actually run?
Distance 8.2 miles.
The voice is definitely a confidence booster. When I hear that voice, it just makes me feel like I'm achieving, I'm progressing, I'm moving forward. If I'm looking for a running partner, I just pull out my phone and dictate a tweet.
Hi Galaxy. Tweet. Anyone up for running an ultra in August?
And before I know it, I had a lot of people saying yeah.
Distance 32.
Running's, given me a great sense of independence and freedom, and it's one of the only times where I don't have to rely on other people or on my guide dog or things like that. It's something I can do alone. You can take that confidence and move it into other areas of your life and believe that things are possible. So if smartphones didn't come out in that sort of time frame, I don't think I'd have ever started running, and I don't think I'd be where I am now. One of the biggest difficulties, with losing your sight is you lose access to information. So having a smartphone has now brought all that back.
What's the weather like in Doncaster today?
It's 9 degrees and partly sunny
It
today.
can read everything to me, it can read my books to me, it can read my email. Sean, lecture's been cancelled, we'll be back in theatre. Even, things like identifying colour of my clothes.
Colour ID, reddish orange.
The smartphone has definitely changed my life. I don't think I could live without a smartphone now. I would lose access to contact with my friends, contact with my family, contact with the bigger outside world. The smartphone really is just, I suppose it's a part of me now.
My name is Simon Wheatcroft, and I'm part of a smarter world.
Sending photos and videos using your smartphone to show how you've pushed the boundaries to win some amazing prizes. Good luck.
Sit. Sit. I can just do this for 10 minutes if you want and entertain everybody. Stay. Okay, so I'm just going to give a bit of background on, how it all started and what made me believe. But it didn't start with technology, and it didn't start with the thought of being able to run. It started in America with an engagement ring in a mountain. The idea was to climb the mountain, get to the top, and propose to my girlfriend. Now, during that hike, it was the first time in my life that things were just becoming too difficult to achieve. I was starting to slip and fall, and there was a sheer drop to thousands of feet to the bottom. And I was thinking, is it worth getting to the top to propose, or am I going to have to make a difficult decision and just stop? And it took me probably about an hour to come to terms that I'm going to have to stop. So, yeah, it remained at a point in my time where I'd stopped just because I couldn't see. So I thought, well, I'll still ask my girlfriend to marry me anyway, see how it goes. And thankfully she said yes, so we got married in Vegas, and that was fantastic. So I was like, oh, it's not that bad. So then, a few months later, I returned home, and I was just sat on my sofa one day, and I was just bored. The smartphones weren't actually that great for reading things to at that point in time. I thought to myself, maybe I should just go outside and have a run. And that thought of stopping previously plagued me, that now, I stopped last time, now I can't stop. I've got to adapt. I've got to do this. I've got to see if I can go outside and run. So behind my house, there was a football pitch. So I went to this football pitch, positioned myself between the goalposts, started runkeeper, and just ran up and down the pitch. And it was great. I'd managed to run 1 mile. 1 mile was fantastic. I'd never run that far solo before, so it was a great achievement. And around that time, the dog walkers got in the way. They assumed I could see, I assumed they would move. It was becoming difficult. So I persuaded my wife to drop me off at a closed road, saying, no, it's fine, I'll just run up and down this road, come and pick me up in a bit. So she dropped me off at the closed road, which is just next to an airport, and I was just running up and down this road. And as sort of the video said, at that point, I realised that runkeeper was giving me a distance marker, always at the same point. I would hit a grate with my foot, and it would say 0.3 miles. And I was thinking to myself, if I always feel the same thing underfoot when it tells me how far I've gone, maybe I can use this to navigate. So I carried on running up and down the road, and I'd achieved 3 miles, which was another great milestone. 3 miles was such a great distance. And then one day, jumped back on that road, running up and down, I thought to myself, I'm just going to step out. So I built up my confidence as I ran up, stepped out onto the road, and just ran down a dual carriageway. Got to the bottom, burst into tears, because I couldn't believe I'd gone from the constraints of a football pitch, the constraints of a closed road, now to the open road. And it was just amazing, it was exhilarating. But I knew I had to quickly get back to the closed road to hide the fact from my wife that I'd just been running down a road. So I quickly ran back to the road, and then I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to get away with this. I'll do it for a few weeks without telling her. She'll never know. So she kept dropping me off at the closed road, and then I spent, it was probably around a month, something like that, learning a route. Now, learning a route involved running into a lamppost and then not running into it the next time. So I pieced together 3 miles, and the way that basically works is the pavement has a camber, so if one foot is lower than the other, you know which side of the pavement you're on. And then at certain points it was banked by grass, so if I hit the grass, I'd gone too far that side. If I hit a bush, I'd gone too far that side. So I just pieced together this route, and then it was around that time I had to tell my wife. And at this point, I wasn't like that running anymore. So it took a week or two of persuading, and she caved in, and she let me back out. So then I carried on running on this route, running into things and, learning where to go. And then I'd reach 10 miles. 10 miles was just phenomenal. So I went home and entered a 100-mile race to see how far I could really run. So I had less than 6 months to train for 100 miles. So now I could really get to the point where I was pushing what technology was capable of and pushing what I was capable of. Thankfully, the first thing to fail was the technology, because the battery wouldn't last long enough on my phone for me to run. So then I solved that by getting some external power to the phone, and then it was great, I could just run. But then the next limit was just my physical fitness. I'd be out running and I'd just collapse. And I'd lay on the road, call my wife and say, oh, you've got to come and find me. I'm just on the road, just come and find me. Again, didn't go down too well. So then we came up with a system where I could call in and say, I'm near number 1, 2, 3, 4, and she'd know roughly where I was. And technology then provided a new solution in terms of runkeepers started doing live tracking. So then she could find out exactly where I was. So if I stopped for a period of time, she could call me, see if I was all right, or if I was going 60 miles an hour, meet me at the hospital. So it was going quite well. I was doing very well, and my 100-mile race was a few weeks away. I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to run this amazing distance. And I'd put together a guide team, because although I could run that road, there was no way I could memorize 100 miles. And then I kept on getting a phone call. Oh, Simon, I've broken my ankle. Oh, great, okay. Oh, Simon, my wife's going to give birth that week. Okay. I think it was a week, and I'd lost everybody. I had no team whatsoever. So I was thinking, how am I going to be able to run this race? So I got out my phone, I jumped on Twitter, and with one tweet, just asking if anyone would help me, I got a 20-person team to meet me at the race and do the run. It was fantastic. It really showed the power of social media. It was great. So the race finally arrived, a little underprepared. 6 months training to go to 100 miles was probably not, enough. So then, during the race, I ran a little bit faster earlier on, and I did mention that I was running at an airport, but I'd rather stupidly enter the race in the Cotswolds, which apparently isn't pancake flat. Didn't realise that until I was there. So I started having to run lots of hills, and my legs were just not conditioned for the hills. So at mile 50, I just broke down again in tears because the pain was phenomenal. I never experienced that much lactic acid buildup. It was really starting to hurt. And I sat down in the crew vehicle thinking, do I stop now? I'm at a point where I'm in physical pain, mentally I'm in a difficult place, but can I live with stopping at 50 miles? And I couldn't live with that. And I told myself that the only way I would stop is if I couldn't stand anymore. So I got back out on that road, I did 33 more miles until I could no longer stand, and I was removed from the race. But it still stands as a great achievement. 83 miles from 6 months training, all alone, was just something that I didn't even feel was possible, like 7-8 months previous. And rather nicely, I managed to surpass the technology, because unbeknownst to me, while I was tracking myself during the run, Runkeeper had set an artificial limit on how far they thought someone would run, and I surpassed that at mile 45. So that was quite nice, so I managed to beat technology. So now I stand at a point where can I go from here? And I'm looking to partner with a few people to achieve 2 great goals. Even though I've run at the ultra distance, I've done half marathons, 10Ks, 5Ks, I've never actually run a marathon. So this year is going to be the first marathon I've ever run. And I'm going to head out to New York to run the New York Marathon. Now, New York, it's tantalizingly close to Boston, and Boston is the birthplace of Runkeeper. So the plan is to run the 300 miles from Boston to the start line of New York, and then run New York. And then to make it a little more interesting and more of a journey and experience and involve other people, I'm going to try and use social media to get that person from mile 1 to mile 300. So if people want to run for 300 yards, people want to run for 5 miles, 10 miles, any distance, they can help me get from Boston to New York. And also technology's advanced so much since I started running. So now I can produce so much live content while I'm actually running, anything from position to heart rate, to photo, to video, to audio. So the plan is to try and generate as much content through mobile as I continue the run. And then the second great adventure is the one Alex mentioned, is the Sahara. While I learned to run solo, I've never been able to compete solo. If I go to a race, I rely on a guide who helps me around the course. And, you know, it's just difficult. I want to achieve that goal of running alone. So I thought to myself, where in the world is there nothing to run into? The desert. There's nothing. I could snake around there. Be fine, just a bit of sand. It's no problem, it's no problem. So then I had to find a desert race and someone who was crazy enough to sign off the insurance that said, yeah, we're going to let a blind guy run that, it'll be fine. So I found a race that uses GPS coordinates. So they give you a coordinate, you just have to run to that coordinate. That's great. Get out a mobile phone, you use a compass, 45 degrees north, just run. So it was great. So I found this race, I was like, I'm going to do it, yeah, it's great, it's great, it's great. It's in the desert, there's nothing to run into. Turns out, the desert's not empty. I never knew that. So now, it's not sand, there's massive things there. But that's a great opportunity now, rather than backing down and not running the desert, now it's a challenge. How can I adapt? What technology can I use to run that terrain? So now it's a case of pairing modern technology of the smartphone, my memory, and I'm just going to, well, I can't take Ascot, so I'm going to have to take the cane. And then it's just going to be a case of memorize where are the big obstacles. You know, mile 43, get out the cane, navigate around there. So use technology with the cane and my ability to see if it's possible to run 160 miles through that terrain in 4 days. And hopefully, I'll place quite high in that race. I'd like to outperform the rest of the people. So in summary, using technology and adapting, you can achieve great things. Thank you.